This video is a parenting guide for a Berlin Aulos. Not any old Berlin Aulos, but Lotos Lab number 36. So this is, it was made by Marco Sciascia in November 2022 and it's in ebony with leather sleeves to adjust the base holes. So you have, on an Aulos, you have your finger holes, and the finger holes are up at the top of the instrument with the thumb hole. You have a Syrinx hole, and we've got lovely little bone pegs for the Syrinx holes. And you've got base holes. So 3 different sorts of hole. And it's the same on the low pipe. A Syrinx hole, and the purpose of the Syrinx hole is to force it into the second register, which is great if you're playing on a trireme, and you need to be heard over the din of all the oars. So we've laser engraved the Lotos logo, which is a little Phoenician small boat, and the unique catalogue number for this instrument, which is 36, 0036. And that's because Lotos Lab is deeply committed to research and development. And so we're going to be tracking everything about this instrument and the reeds that go out. And we'd be very grateful to everyone who uses it to record any issues, any observations, because as I said at the beginning, this is a parenting guide, and what we have here is a newborn. It will change, not so much the instrument, but particularly the reeds. Okay, these are infants here, and I am going to go through all the contents. The reed, this is a reed case with 2 pairs of reeds. One's been toasted and one hasn't been toasted. This is not a Theophrastian yoke, and this is a Theophrastian yoke. This is a little feather to oil the reeds. Very important. We've got 2 sorts of oil. A little a bottle here with rapeseed oil, and in fact I might begin by oiling the reeds because that needs to be done when they are dry. So we'll take these older reeds. These have been, let's call them toddlers, okay? They've had a bit more testing and they've been sort of walking around. They haven't had much playing, but they're dry now, which is perfect for oiling. So oiling is something that you want to do frequently. It doesn't need to be daily, but maybe once a week if you're practicing regularly. And I've trimmed this feather. Okay, the sort of feather it comes from is I think it's a pigeon primary wing covert, if you want to be technical about your feathers. And I've just taken because you'll probably need to replace it at some stage. It's lovely and simple. You just take a pair of scissors and you trim your feather like that. There we go. And I'll do the other side. Again, it's not easy trimming feathers, and you just pick them up off the ground. Keep your eyes peeled, and any little feather that's reasonably straight and isn't going to destroy your reed. So there we go. There's another one. The trick with oiling reeds is you just get, where are we? You put a little bit of oil in your feather and then you just drop it inside, because it's the inside that matters. And I'll get another drop And I do it on a chopping board, a kitchen chopping board, because they always get a bit dry, and your chopping board is going to be grateful for a bit of oil. And rapeseed oil has been used by double reed players for centuries. Okay, I think the first evidence we have is a bassoon treatise in German from the early 1800s. But it's traditional and it works and it's lovely and cheap. So I'm just using supermarket vegetable oil. You can see this is rape. In North America, it's called canola. You can use any light frying oil, but I like my rapeseed. You can use much more expensive oils like tea seed oil, but I don't think it makes a great deal of difference. So I just use the cheap rapeseed. And I want to do the other one. I love oiling reeds. It's kind of, you know, you're giving them just a bit of love. And so, yeah, I just do a couple inside. There we go. Now it's got a very thin base, that oil. So I'm going to put the lid on before it falls over. If you want, you can use a bigger bottle. This is what I use with my little feather inside. But it's nice to have things compact. So I've sort of compressed everything you need to look after this Aulos into this little spectacle case here. So I'll just finish the oiling, having sort of put that. I just wipe my fingers across that, and then I can use that to oil the outside. Okay, so there we go. That's how you oil your reeds. Now notice that I've colour coded them red and blue. And the system that I have sort of established together with Marco Sciascia is to use blue or blue-green. Think of the Virgin Mary or Venus for the high pipe, and red Mars, if you like, for the low pipe. And it's not that the low pipe is longer, it's that it's lower. So you could think of male and female voice if you want. But here we are. You can see that the blue Venus high pipe, into which I'm going to put the blue reed, the holes are higher. Okay, so the hand will go here. These are the finger holes, as opposed to the base holes and the Syrinx hole, and the Bombyx hole. Okay, that exit is called the Bombyx hole because the whole length of your Aulos is the Bombyx, and that's because, well, not on a Lotos. Lotos means lotus wood, and the lotus wood was black. Okay, this isn't from the lotus tree. This is ebony, but it's very similar to lotus wood, which was prized by Aulos makers. So Pliny the Elder tells us. So we're called Lotus Lab because the wood that was used for making the wooden alloy was Ziziphus lotus. Well, that's the leading candidate botanically. And it's the black heartwood of a tree that grows in North Africa and has delicious sweet fruit. So that's why we're called Lotus Lab. But it's called the Bombyx hole because alloy were also made of tibia bones. And when you have a whole lot of tibia bones in sequence, it looks a bit like a silkworm, which is a Bombyx. So the Bombyx hole, the base holes, the finger holes, and the Syrinx hole. Now, I'll just go through the contents of the I suppose maintenance kit, everything you need to look after this Aulos. Almond oil. Okay. Now I'm a recycler, so I've reused a hotel shampoo bottle. This one came from Sardinia. Okay. I was with Gonville and Keys College Choir. I remember that hotel. And here is a trimmed herringull feather, okay, picked up off the beach. And that is what you need to use for oiling the bores. So, almond oil, and it's always this top end that needs the most oil, okay? Because this is where it gets wet, and make sure, again, oiling you only ever do when your instrument is totally dry, so it gets the maximum absorption. There we go. And I quite like this feather, you know, something real and organic. And then I'll put it in from the other end as well. There we go. That's all it needs. And again, like the reeds, it's the inside that matters. Okay. So a good bit of oiling on the reed seat. That's where, if a crack is going to appear, it's going to be up here, okay? And that's because of the moisture as you play. So it just suffers much more stress up there with the changes in humidity. So there we go. Nice coating of oil. Feathers are great for smearing, okay? There we go. And then again, I just run my fingers up the feather. And you can see there, that is from, this is a new instrument, so there's still bits of ebony. And I suppose I might just clean that off. Yeah, I'm not gonna, I want to get rid of that kind of ebony dust from the bore. But there's still plenty of oil on my fingers, and if you want to give your instrument, yeah, you have to sort of move the base hole sliders down a bit to get, there we go. Now if you want to give it a real bit of a polish, this is beeswax, all right? So you just, a quick bit of beeswax on there, yeah, and then just a bit of your own hands, and that will make it look really lovely. Now if you, as I did, if you've got a bit of beeswax in there, don't worry, you can just fish that out with the feather. There we go. Beeswax is lovely stuff, very, very important, okay? Got to have beeswax with you at all times. So there we go, that's what you might do with, again, you have to just move the base hole sleeves up out the way so that you can give a bit of oil, and then down they come, and there we go. These base hole sleeves, I haven't done a double knot here, this is just a bow. And that's because as the leather dries out with a change of climate, it may well become too loose. So just undo the bow, tighten it up, okay? Tighten it and tie a bow again. Once it's totally stabilised, and maybe a couple of years, if you're staying in the same climate, then maybe you do a double knot and glue it. But for the time being, I prefer an adjustable sleeve there. And I'll put the cap on the almond oil, which has been used again traditionally for woodwind instruments for centuries. So we're not going to mess with tradition. Tried and tested. And what else do we have in here? You've got your beeswax. Here, okay, in this little packet, there are 2 bits of black plasticine. Now, that's an alternative to these bone pegs. We've been experimenting. I initially tried using a little wooden cocktail stick, and that broke. So I switched to using a bit of copper, and that's quite nice. But against this lovely black wood, the bone is rather beautiful. So, so this is our latest experiment for the Syrinx plugs. However, if you find that they fall out, or you don't like them, then you can always go back to the black plasticine and just stick on the black plasticine over the hole. Now, also in this little bag is a piece of Goldbeater's skin. Now, Goldbeater's skin, I can get this open. It's a little bit oily, which doesn't make it easy to open, but there we go. The Goldbeater skin is wonderfully strong and very, very thin material that is perfect for repairing reeds. Okay, again, it's been used by reed players for centuries, and it's for accidents that happen. Now, here are some reeds, you know what, you can't tell. But as I was beginning to practice these reeds, a crack developed, and it's just so frustrating. So you could chuck it away, or if you love the reeds and they're going really nicely and you want to eke out a little bit more life from them, you can glue a little bit of Goldbeater skin over the crack. Now I think this cracked on, no, it's the other one that cracked on both sides. Okay, so this is a Theophrastian yoke. So if a crack appears on one side, it's going to appear on the other one as well, because it's a natural weakness in the cane. So there we go. I've glued a little bit of Goldbeater skin all the way down. And I do that by cutting. I'll cut a little bit and then I'll stick it onto my finger. There's just enough grease on your finger for the Goldbeater skin to stick. And then I'll take, now I don't ever put the super glue directly onto the Goldbeater skin. That's where I would use the cocktail stick. So I would get a bit of scrap paper, put a little bit of glue, a little tiny little drop onto the paper, pick it up with the cocktail stick, and then smear it just delicately onto the Goldbeater skin, and with it stuck to my finger, so that I can then take the reed and then I would eye it very carefully to make sure that the crack is going to be central to the Goldbeater skin, which is almost invisible. You need to do this in sunlight or with a very strong light so that you can see this almost invisible Goldbeater skin on your finger. And then I would go like that onto my finger, and okay, there's going to be a little, hopefully there will be a little bit of super glue sticking your finger to the reed, because you want the glue to have gone right to the edges of the Goldbeater skin. So I then just gently peel it off, okay? And if you've done it well, then the Goldbeater skin will be on the reed, and you can just take a bit of 500 grit sandpaper just to smooth it off, or 800 grit, very, very fine, just to sort of take away any brittleness, so that when it goes into your lip, nice and smooth, and that way you don't even notice the repair on your lip. You can maybe see the Goldbeater's skin, and on the low pipe reed, it's a fingerprint. I can see my own fingerprint on the Goldbeater skin, and after I've done this, in order that you really can't feel anything on the lip, you can see that one. I've created plenty of width here. And I've just smoothed it off using this is 800 grit sandpaper, okay, very, very fine. Just a little smooth off to get rid of any sensations that when I put it in the lip, you really can't feel anything. That's what's so wonderful about Goldbeater skin. Now this little slip of 800 grit sandpaper, it's wet or dry paper. I've cut it carefully so that occasionally what happens with reeds is that they stick, okay, because you've oiled them, a bit of oil inside, and then with the clamping, okay, let's look at these ones. With the clamping here and the oiling, sometimes they're reluctant to open, and that stickiness is particularly a problem if when you're playing, the tonguing isn't clean. If they're not tonguing beautifully, then what you might want to do is take your 800 grit wet or dry paper, and when the reed is open, it's not going to do it now, but when the reed is open, because all these are closed, but you can just squeeze it in to the opening of the reed, squash it down with your fingers and pull out. Okay, that is the action. Let's see if I can find a reed that's open. Okay, yeah, this old cracked one is open. Now, okay, it's a different sort of reed. So what I would do is just very carefully slip the wet or dry. Now, if that is too thick to go in, I would just put in one. There we go. So that is inside the reed, all right? And then I hold it between my thumb and finger and I just pull it out like that. And I might do that 2 or 3 times, and you'll be able to see on the wet or dry whatever it is that it's pulling out. And that is just a way of cleaning up any stuff that has built up inside the reed. So, very important little tool. I'll pop that back inside the reed box. In the reed case, I simply would keep the 2 pairs of reeds, and always have 2 pairs of reeds. As soon as one is no longer working, get yourself a spare pair. So you've got 2 working reeds with their reed caps, and I cannot emphasize the importance of the reed caps enough. They are beautiful things. You need to take as much trouble over your reed caps as over every part of your playing. The feather for oiling the reeds, the dryer for drying the stems after you've played, and the sandpaper, 800 wet or dry, cut to shape so that you can stop them sticking if that develops and things build up. Now, talking about build up, one of the crucial things to be conscious of as the parent caretaker of an Aulos is moisture and mould. The 2 things are intimately connected, because if you leave something moist in a unventilated space, it will go mouldy, okay? That's why this case has breathable foam at both ends. Now, I am an relatively experienced Aulos player, and what did I do last week? I left an instrument inside a tube that had non-breathable caps, okay? So here was a little tube and I wanted to travel light, so I just chucked it in a tube, and I can't believe it! I am such an idiot. Look, my beautiful Isteritz pipe with a fabulous reed that I love, my first ever Phragmites reed, and look what's happened. Okay? So this is a cautionary tale. Always, always, always leave your reed case open in a safe place to dry with natural ventilation. Not near a radiator, just... What's important is that it's not closed in an airtight container. I mean, I'd only played it for like 30 seconds. It can't have been that wet. But the point is, there was no circulation. Okay? Any moisture inside a sealed tube and it will go mouldy, shortening the life of your reed. So what do you do? Every double reed player, I suggest, pops along to the chemist and buys some hydrogen peroxide. Okay? Now, you find it 3%, 6%, 9%. Buy whatever you can. With reeds, you probably want to, I tend to buy a 9% bottle, if I can find it, and then dilute it. So I'm going to just do that right now. Well, in fact, I have some previously prepared here. This is already diluted. So let's use that. And you should, if it's still alive, when you open it, you'll hear a little sort of fizz, because you need that fizzing action of the hydrogen peroxide to do its business. So here we are. I'm going to get a bit of what we call in the UK kitchen towel. And I'm simply going to disinfect. I don't really want to do this with anything else near, okay? I'm going to make sure that the spores from the mould aren't going to go anywhere. Let's clear up all of that. And here we are. I'm just going to dip it straight into the kind of 3% hydrogen peroxide solution. Now this is a nylon 3D printed Easteritz pipe. I might, if I want to really disinfect it, I might increase to 6%, but that's going to do the job. Now, more concerning is the reed, okay? So, off comes the cap. I am going to just put the whole of this reed into the hydrogen peroxide solution. Now, if that is still active, I'll start to see bubbles coming up. Okay, there you are. I can see little bubbles starting to ascend, and then what I'll do is I'll get a little pipe cleaner. So I have one over here. I'll get a pipe cleaner, and if they're not thick enough, I just double them up and give it a bit of a twist. So I'll take my pipe cleaner and just dunk it in, okay? We need some decent hydrogen peroxide cleaning here. And you want to be careful with hydrogen peroxide because it will bleach. Yeah, there you are. You can see that is still active, all right? After a time, it sort of dies on you, so you want to freshen it up. And it's great stuff. Give it a good clean. Now that reed, basically, hydrogen peroxide does take the life out of your reeds. Yeah, it bleaches them a bit. So I would always, having given it a good disinfect, I would let it dry overnight and then oil with the feather and the canola or rapeseed oil. Okay, so that reed's good as new. Okay, you don't want to leave it too long in your hydrogen peroxide, but hydrogen peroxide is essential. Also, if you're sharing reeds with other people, make sure that you are not passing germs. As I said, just dilute it so that it's still effective. Okay. You want to dilute, if it's too strong, if you try putting, a reed that's just been in 6% hydrogen peroxide into your lips, you'll feel it start to burn on your lips. I wouldn't recommend that. Take it down to 3% and that's safe. So, clean, hygienic reeds and breathable cases. It's important to point out two sorts of superglue. Okay, there is high viscosity superglue that flows very nicely, and I would use that for doing a Goldbeater skin repair. And then there is superglue gel, and I use the superglue gel for either preventing a leak or repairing a leak that develops down the sides of reeds. Now you can see here, that has opened up quite a bit. In fact, let's just do this. So I'll take my gel that is already open, and the gel is much, let's say, oh, now just beware, there are two sections to this cap, okay? If you want to get the fine section, you have to grip it firmly there and just take off the cap. Now, hopefully, superglue, you know what, there's a lot of skill with using superglue. This gel is reasonably, let's say, more accommodating, and it's quite nice. So I'm just going to put the tiniest smear along here, because I know that this reed is leaking somewhat. Okay, and I just don't want there to be any leak on the side. So just a little bit of glue up. And be very delicate. You don't want to get super glue all over your reed and all over your fingers. So this is a very delicate operation. Don't put too much on. Okay, that's not bad. And the super glue gel just has a bit more substance to it. It's easier to work with than the very runny stuff. So there we go. That will make sure that I don't have any leaks down the side, and you can always neaten it up. Now I'm going to just hold that between two fingers, pop the cap straight back on. There we go. Avoid with super glue squeezing it too hard, because it just squirts out and you get it can be a bit of a hassle. I might need to clean that. I might need to, in order to get the cap on properly, I might need to get a knife and just scrape some of that hard stuff off. Otherwise, let's just do that. Yeah, it's kind of bonded. Okay, now some people aren't confident using knives. If you prefer not to use knives, then you can, let's see, with a knife you always make sure that if it were to slip, it goes away from any flesh. So there we go. Now, again, I'm just cleaning up that super glue. So it's clearly leaked out. There we go, and it doesn't matter. I've got taken a little bit of the black plastic. There we go. So now hopefully my lid will go on. Yes, hooray. Okay, so that's my super glue. Now, with this guy, I can see that it's not the neatest of jobs, so I can just, with my cocktail stick, I'm just going to neaten it up very gently. There we go. And I'll use a little bit of tissue paper to just clean the cocktail stick. And on the other side, just smear that along once. Don't go over and over and over and over. Just do it one action. Clean up your cocktail stick straight away. Now I'm going to put that down so that no edge, so that super glue isn't going to stick to anything. So I'm just going to lay it like that and give my cocktail stick a good clean. Okay, no super glue touching anything, and then put that straight in the bin. And now my cocktail stick can go back in my case. Okay, so that's the two sorts of super glue. I'll also just explain the difference. These threads here, I like having different coloured threads so I can recognise each reed. Each one is, they're such personalities, individuals, and this is, let's say, kind of soft, lovely, squishy thread. It's a twill, 6-ply twill that I have soaked in a mixture of melted beeswax and just a little bit of almond oil, so that so that when you wrap it round the reed here, it creates a lovely, soft and airtight entry into the reed seat. Now that's not got, okay. Here is why you need super glue in your case, because I find it really annoying, okay, when the binding slips like that. Okay, now it slips for a very good reason. Cane has a lovely waterproof coating that is designed to protect it from the elements. That's really slippy. Now, you want to have a solid binding here. Now, we have laser engraved a unique serial number on this reed. This one is AAAB, okay, and it's part of a pair. Okay, so the other one, matching it will also be AAAB. That's because it's a Theophrastian yoke, so they have the same serial number. Now, these, in fact, are suitable for silver pipes of Ur. So I'm going to put them down and just pick up these slightly larger reeds, which are for Berlin Aulos. And these ones are AABM. Okay, so I can go to my Lotos Lab catalogue and look up exactly when and where this was harvested. In fact, what are we? AABM. So that is Benevento Fiume Calore, harvested on the 17th of September 2022. And in fact, these reeds were made just in December, so not following Theophrastus' instructions, because we were in a bit of a hurry. But actually, I'm very pleased with these reeds. They're the best Berlin Aulos reeds I've ever played. But I pop these on to demonstrate the two different sorts of thread. Okay, so this is nice, squishy thread, perfect for a reed seat, and that's what you have in your case here. Okay, squishy 6-ply twill. This is waxed braided polyester, which is sold for leatherworking, and it's not so good for the reed seat. Okay, it's lovely if you're doing this sort of binding on the external or this sort of binding, but it's not good where you're wanting an airtight seal. So I'm going to take it off. Okay, we're not going to use braided waxed polyester for the reed seat. Instead, I'm going to take a supply of this nice squishy stuff. And in fact, another point, I wouldn't ever, this is why you need beeswax, okay? You have beeswax in your kit so that you never, ever, ever tie a knot on your, on the thread that goes into the reed seat. Because you always need to find the end to adjust it, okay, for intonation or just to put a different colour on, say you're switching your reeds around. We've got various colour systems going. This blue and red is just an easy, immediate, fail-safe way of knowing which reed goes in your high pipe. So Venus, or I think of Virgin Mary blue for the high pipe, and red, Mars red for the low pipe. And in fact, you can see in this system of colours here, you've got Mars and Venus here in the middle. But in fact, this is a planetary system, which was first described by Herodotus, and he noticed it. It's the Babylonian Ziggurat system, sort of established in the 7th or 8th century BCE, where they coloured the tiers of their magnificent, concentric battlements. So Herodotus described the battlements at Ecbatana: white for Jupiter, black for Saturn, so that's the bright star and the dark star, red for Mars, blue for blue-green. It's a kind of, the archaeological evidence is glass. Okay, so blue-green for or lapis lazuli for Venus, and then orange for Mercury, silver and gold. Okay, so on these reeds, rather than using this kind of yellow thread, I've actually used some metallic gold thread, and that indicates that these reeds were made from the 7th internodium. So a piece of cane growing will have all these internodal sections, and the bottom one we're labelling with white for Jupiter. So the 2nd internodium, the waist here has orange. So that tells me that this Theophrastian yoke was made from the Mercury, or the 5th internodium. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th internodium. Whereas these reeds, with the gold waistband, they were made from the 7th internodium. And this is like a Babylonian stairway to heaven. because at the top of your ziggurat, the sort of temple where the astronomers made their observations, that was well, somehow it shone gold, and and below it shone silver. So you have these described in the 5th century BC by Herodotus, and it's just a nice memorable way of identifying which internodium your reeds are made from. Again, this is because Lotos Lab is committed to research. We don't know the answers, but Theophrastus does observe that reeds made from higher up the stem towards the flower are softer than those made down below, which is kind of obvious. So this is just a way of recording which, because otherwise you lose the data. When you've made the reed, you lose which one's which. And you'll see also here a little arrow. So that arrow is also under here, it masked by the binding, but that arrow goes up the way so that we can tell this Theophrastian yoke grew like this. Okay, so the arrow is the sap direction from the root to the flower. Now, normally one would put the one that's lower down the plant into the low pipe. But with the Berlin Aulos, it's slightly strange. The Berlin Aulos doesn't really work with reeds that are identical, and that Theophrastian system is maybe 4 centuries or 3 centuries earlier than the Berlin Aulos. So, in fact, the Berlin Aulos kind of needs to be the other way around. You need to have the deeper reed or the lower pitched reed in the high pipe. So that's why this slightly fatter reed is in the high pipe. Let's just check that the seating is good. Okay, I want that little strand there. I don't want that to get in the way, so I'm going to take my beeswax and just rub it round like that. Okay, so if you have a strand of thread that comes loose, take your beeswax, and if you want, you can, if you want to give it extra beeswax, then you just go like that. Okay, good coating of beeswax. And then you just let the beeswax do the sticking. Okay, that's obviously on the outside, but on the inside, in order to stop it sliding up your reed, okay, because when you put it in, there's a bit of pressure. There's a bit of pressure as you wiggle it back and forth. Now this wiggle back and forth, never a twisting motion, always a back and forth. And that's so that you don't split the blades and that they don't go scissors. Just a gentle back and forth rocking motion until it's nicely, firmly in place. We're going to use the super glue now to make that binding that was slipping solid. First thing is to know how to open the super glue. A brand new tube. You'll need, it's sealed there, so you use the little sharp corner bit at the end of the cap to puncture. There we go. And that will now open. And you just need to be very careful with super glue not to put too much pressure on it. So just very gingerly avoiding it splurging and leaking. Okay, so now we have, I'm going to find the gold reed. This is the gold reed that we're, actually I'm going to obliterate, I'll have to obliterate the serial number, okay, because it needs to go into the Aulos about that far, because the Berlin, well, it's just the way the Berlin Aulos is. So I'm going to put a bit of super glue all the way around, holding it up here so I don't get super glue on my fingers. I'll start there and just very, very gently. Okay, a bit of super glue all the way around. There we go. Now I'll hold the super glue vertically and get that cap back on, taking real care not to squeeze the lower section. And I'm just going to let that sit up. It's ideally it would sit vertically so that it sinks down and no longer so the air is at the top. Now back to our reed, and in fact I'm going to begin and do this a composite binding, first of all with some of the waxed braided, the cobbler's, what do we call it, thread, and I'm going to just, that will stick to the super glue, and I'm going to, there we go, that's nice. So that's already stuck. Now I can begin to, I'll cross over and as firmly as I feel is safe with for the strength of the material, I'm going to create a binding, and the purpose here is that this is not going to slip. Okay? Oops. And I could put a little bit more super glue on because my experience is that because the angle goes, it gets smaller, the diameter gets smaller as you go up. So as you put the reed in, it just has an annoying habit of slipping. So I'm going to put a little bit more super glue on. Again, just all, in fact, the way to do it is to put the super glue onto the string, onto the thread. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. That will now do the neatest possible job. Again, leaving it vertical. And now, careful not to hold it where you put the super glue. So I can now just go around. And with any luck, this will not slip on us. And I'm just going to hold a bit more firmly now so I can get tighter. Around we go. Now, I'm going to put more super glue on the binding because, as you can see, I've reached the end of what I had super glued. So a little bit more. And it's wise to do this after you have verified how much you need to put on, because it's horrible if you have to undo what you've just super glued. So I know from experience how much this needs. If you're not totally sure, test it first. Okay. Now, I'm going to, yeah, it's looking nice. Again, it doesn't need to be totally covered in super glue because then if you do have to take it off one day, it looks horrible. So how is that fitting in? Oh yes, okay. So I want it to go in about that far. That is feeling nice and firm now. You know, we've reproduced this reed seat. That's how it is in the original. Okay. So did they do this sort of business? Did they use a much thicker sort of reed? All sorts of possibilities. I'm just going to, this is the system that is working for us now, but none of this, you know, everything is hypothesis, and there are many ways, many possible solutions. So it'll be interesting to learn over the next, with lots of people trying different things. I'm going to be thorough here. There we go. Oh, now this has all got a bit airy, okay? There were bubbles in that. So you see what I mean about viscous superglue? This is totally different to the gel, right? So you use the two sorts of superglue for different things. I find this ideal for binding work. In fact, I know that I'm going to need a little bit more, so I'm just going to leave that ready. Hold it nice and firmly so I can get decent tension. And I want to imitate the shape of the reed seat. So I'm now going back up to the top, and in order to finish it off firmly, a little bit more super glue all the way along here. Just leaving myself a little bit at the end. So unsuperglued so that I can hold it without getting super glue on my fingers. And round we go. Now, there we are. Just a little bit of super glue on my fingers, and in fact, to tidy it up at the end, I will go like this, just where it will be needed, so it doesn't come apart. And I'm just, now, you might prefer not to do this, but I just do a quick like that with my fingers, because the super glue does come off reasonably easily. There we go. And that just gets a nice little finish. I'm not doing a knot or anything because I'm actually going to cover all of that with my nice squidgy. There we go. Now I'm just checking that there's nothing left there. Good, good, good. Hooray! That's what I like, okay? A solid, there's no wobble in that. It really fills the reed seat. And I'm not going to press too hard right now because, oh yes, because I want the super glue to be nice and firm. But that is for me, one of the most important uses of super glue with the Berlin Aulos, making sure that that binding doesn't slip. Okay, that is now hopefully solid. And what I can do is add a little bit of the nice squidgy thread over this more solid cobbler's waxed braided polyester. So there we are. Now let's just look at, I'll put the lid back on the super glue, okay, taking care not to squeeze this part, okay, just don't squeeze that at all because then it comes up here and it goes everywhere, all right, just delicately leave your super glue, your two sorts of super glue, in the maintenance case. And now let's move to the reed case, okay? So we have in the reed case two Theophrastian yokes, and I'm going to use two different colours of reed caps. I'm going to give the kind of burgundy reed caps to the gold reeds made from the 7th internodium, okay? And so I just hold the reed cap like that and pop it on. And these reed caps are the parents of the reeds. Okay, they're absolutely vital. You can do a certain amount of work with your lips, okay, playing the reed, but really it's when you put the reeds to bed. You put them to sleep. That is when they learn. Okay, and they take the shape that you want. These have not been toasted. You can see here, that's a toasted reed. And in fact, this is before we started doing the colour coding system. All right, so this was made maybe last November 2022, whereas these were made late December 2022 with the Ziggurat colour coding system. And we decided not to toast anymore. Okay, so these are being parented not with a flame, but with reed caps. And it's the number of sleeps you give them. Okay, So you play them until they just begin to get a little bit hard work on the lips, and then you put them to bed. Okay, and you've got 2 pairs of reeds, so you can alternate a little bit of one, a little bit of the other, and keep the reed caps on, because the more you put them to bed, the more you let them sleep and dry out, the nicer they get, the better behaved they become. These are still infants, and they've got to go through toddlerhood, childhood, adolescence, and eventually they will stabilise and become reliable, or at least they'll settle down. Okay, and that's to do with the opening up they change as you play them. They change. To wake them up, take some hot water. Okay, you can come out the kettle, let it cool a little. Boiling water is a bit too vicious, but you open them up by just taking out the reed cap, and I would do them both at the same time. Okay, and I'll just bring my hot water, and I would just dip them in up to the logo, okay, up to the belly of the reed. And depending on how hot the water is, you might not need to put them in very long. What we're wanting is for them to just pop open, and you can help them pop open by blowing. There we are. That one's not quite open so much, so I'll give it a little bit longer, because you want to keep them even. Okay, there we are. Now, I'm just looking at them, and you can probably see that one's just beginning to open up, whereas this one isn't quite so open. So I'm going to give it a little bit more. And that's the kind of level of openness you want. Okay, if it starts to get more open than that, you want to put the reed caps back on. How's this one doing? Yes. Okay, so that's now opening up. You want to take off the moisture. And let's see how they sound in the lip. Okay, there's a nice range on that one. Okay, and even more range on that one, and that's because it's opened up a bit more. No, it's because I've cut them to different lengths. Okay, so you want, the oddity with the Berlin Aulos is the high reed, the high-pitched reed needs to go in the low pipe. So this is the one we've just glued. I'm going to, yes. Okay, now I probably want it to go in a bit further than that. But I'm not going to press too hard too quickly. It might just need a little bit of beeswax to sort of squidge it down. There we go. Beeswax all the way around. Beeswax, lovely stuff. There we go. Now lining it up. So I look at the whole. I have the reed horizontal with the. I always put the, let's say, the logo facing up. And then I rotate the holes, so the holes will just, this is the low pipe, so it needs to go that way. Okay, so the reed is horizontal, but the holes are nice and ergonomic for my left hand on the bass pipe. There we go. And I find it really nice to have the red binding on the low pipe, so I just get the reed right. Okay, the low reed goes in the low pipe. We pop in the Bombyx, the Syrinx plug. There we go. And I'm going to get the other reed in, so I play the pipes together. No, not that one. This one. That's already opening up. Ooh. I maybe put it in a little bit too long in the water. So again, I have the reed horizontal, And the holes this time are going to go over for my right hand, high pipe in the right hand. And again, I like having the binding just a little bit proud of the reed seat. So it's nice and solid. You do not want your reed to be wobbling. And the plug, the Syrinx plug in. All right, because I don't want to be playing. I'm not in a trireme, and I need to put my earplugs in. If you play without these, you really need to get earplugs in. It's so high and loud. All right, now I can see right now that my high pipe reed has opened up more than my low pipe reed. That means it's going to be harder, okay? And I might even I can tell. I'm going to give it just a little bit with the reed cap on. So instead of parenting it with my lips, I'm parenting it with the reed cap. Okay, so while that just, evens up the level of openness, I will do a little exercise with the low pipe. And it's certainly all the iconography, it's very clear. It often looks like they're playing like this, and it makes perfect sense. Certainly, I find trying to play like that, there's so much more tension. If you want to give yourself injury, practice like this, okay? If you want to protect your body from strain, then I would highly recommend that you adopt, this is exactly how Lionheaders players in Sardinia play. It's just a gentle caressing, treat the instrument like a baby, okay? Caressing the thing. Wonderful diaphragmatic support, okay? You've got to really support from below. And then high compression with the lips. And I always do a little bit of vibrato because that helps loosen, okay? You don't want to avoid the grippiness. So a little bit of arm vibrato for two reasons. One, to make sure you're relaxed on the shoulder and on the elbow and on the wrist. And two, to find your placement because you want to be in the middle. So find a place where you can do a beautiful vibrato, okay? You could try going down to the bottom of your pitch window. So I'm falling off, the reed's just about to fall off my lip. That's a kind of slack, harsh sound. But if you want to play loud and coarse, that's where you go. And then, if you want to create a golden, refined honey tone, you bring your arm in. Now, this is all without changing the compression. So all of this is with high lip compression and high abdominal pressure. So this, Marco Sciascia has done a beautiful job here. I do like this. It's like the top of the Aulos. And when you've finished playing, you just drop it through and pull. And it's important to remove the condensation, okay? You'll notice as you play, particularly putting warm breath into a cold instrument, very quickly you get condensation. And so whenever you finish, just pull through. I'd like to conclude by thanking the people who have made this possible, because this instrument here has had many hands and many minds and thousands of hours of work bringing it to fruition. And in fact, they begin, I've got them all here. You know, the first Berlin Aulos I received was made by Thomas Rezanka in Austria from measurements. We're all following measurements by Stefan Hagel. The idea of adding these leather sleeves. These are the first leather sleeves I created. You know, I tied tassels on them, but they kind of get a bit in the way. So I've gone for a simpler solution for this instrument, which is for Vermont University, and I'm very, very grateful to John Franklin and his department. And I wish all the players who have time parenting this instrument joy and creative fun figuring it out, because you're at the vanguard of discovering what the Berlin Aulos can do. You know, this is all new. This is cutting edge research. Please stay in touch. Send us what you learn. Send us your criticisms and how can we make this better? What works for you? What doesn't work? I must thank Robin Howell, who made the first reeds that Callum Armstrong and I have been using for the Berlin Aulos. These are all in Rundo Donax, made in 2016. Robin Howell really led the way. And Marco Sciascia has done fantastic work harvesting all the Phragmites. These are the first reeds that Marco made for Berlin Aulos. And they're not a Theophrastian yoke, but we've now moved into a new era, playing the Berlin Aulos with Theophrastian yokes. And it's scary, because what we have ahead of us is unknown territory. Yes, it's a Greco-Roman Aulos. We can be guided by the Louvre Aulos. We can be guided by Aristoxenus and other ancient evidence. But what we do with it is virgin territory. So, have fun.
Iniziamo a fare fuori. Non resterà cinghiale.